360. Talk 360 for in-depth analysis on the week's news with Latif.
Actually, let's ask Francis this question specifically and ask Francis, if today you were invited to place a tender today, the date today being the 28th of October, would F&P change if this tender was invited for Wednesday, say next week?
First, I think I need to respond to Steve about the matter of PIEA, because I'm the vice chairman of PIEA. The charter of PIEA expressly forbids any commercial discussions by marketers in any forum. We are an industry that is properly regulated, very keenly watched, and very aware of our duty and our responsibilities. And I would invite you to attend any of the meetings of PIEA to see that matters that we discuss are matters of furtherance of standards, of good practice, and there can never be a discussion about pricing. Now, our industry has 63 marketers. It's bigger than the banking industry in terms of the number of players. That is 63 at oil marketing level. Yeah. The industry and ERC is happy. I'm happy for ERC to correct me. The license is free. So really, if there's more open industries, you can literally walk in and get your license and apply and get your license for free. Nobody's going to pay. Now, the tender is also open, and the reason why there's a tender is what I explained earlier, that if everybody loaded a boat and sent it to Mombasa, first, we will incur massive demurrage because you're able to handle only 13 vessels at a time. Secondly, and more importantly, you need to realize that when we're in a price-regulated regime like we are today, the regulator needs to obtain certain data, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, it is very important that they have the most transparent data, which is basically by way of a tender, to be able to then capture that as the cost of the product. And then a responsible cost when the industry incurs demurrage, because it cannot avoid demurrage for whatever reason, because something could happen. The line, we normally have the pipeline going down because of things like electrical failure.
Yeah.
Now, when there's demurrage as a result of that, responsibly calculated and vetted, that's when it gets captured into the pump price. Now, coming to the matter of premiums, and I'll try to explain this broadly because that's the responsible thing to do. It's a market. There are 63 marketers. Any one of them is invited to bid, isn't it?
Yep.
Now, we're not producers. None of the companies is a producer of oil. So as soon as you see the invitation to bid, everybody goes out to the market. You may find oil. You may not find oil, isn't it?
There's no guarantee that because you're a marketer,
that you will find it. So when you find the oil, this is the offer that you're given, isn't it? And you put in and you put it in. And oil is traded by the second for anybody who is, just like in the financial markets.
It's like
if you go in onto what we call the ICE platform, you're able to see actually the movement of price on a second-by-second basis, isn't it? Now, the sentiment of the owners of if it's crude oil, at that point, they want to show Kenya this. Then that's a price, isn't it? Remember that a tender is the most guiding term, the clearest guiding term says the lowest tendered bid, isn't it?
Yeah.
It will be what it will be. The lowest is what carries the day. The moment you get whatever number, I think it's wrong on our part to then start comparing this number versus last number, because dynamics are different.
I think it might not be fair, Eric, if we went into things. My expectation of this discussion, in my view, and I'm sorry I stand corrected, is not to get in the science of things. Because we are consumers, we are seeing everything wrong. Things are disguised, as if they're right, but they're not right. Look at the bid that, was just outrageous. There were only 3 bidders. But the second one, I think 2 new more came in, and is what stops people from a phone call? Just before you have you go to sleep, to agree on what you're going to do in terms of pricing, because as he says, none of the companies produces fuel, and by the way, if they don't bring that fuel, we will be in trouble. So there's a problem here, the governance of it. That why is it? In fact, the victim here is actually the regulator. because it appears somebody regulates this elsewhere. The regulator only conveys a message, and that's why we are saying it's important that the regulator be given more powers to be able to vet some of these issues. Like the regulator, when it comes to pricing, the regulator almost nothing. So what are they regulating?
Are you insinuating that there's some sort of cartel behavior?
Yes, of course, and they know.
Because when you say that, it appears like you're saying, for example, if a first bid had 3 players and a second bid had 6 players, the other 3 were invited to come and bid because
It's more of a formality. And then, in fact, one of the companies was very new, because we don't want to mention any company. It was very new. And the most interesting bit also, if you want to know that what I'm saying is actually factual, look at the statement that the regulator issued on 14th of October. One of the things he said is that we have observed an inconsistent trend in the price of refined petroleum in the international market over the last 1 month, and it makes it difficult to predict the effect on pump prices. Look at the regulator saying that. Actually, even the regulator is saying it's difficult for him to be able to predict. So now this prediction is actually coming from the marketers. So we have a club of about 3 companies specifically that are actually controlling this. And even marketers themselves actually have issues. And they're coming to the consumer and saying, consumers, please come out and defend yourself, because your interests are not being catered for by this open tender system. So there are questions about that.
Engineer Linus Gitonga, you must understand where Stephen Mutoro is coming from. He's a consumer, and as a consumer, he's operating from a point of, this is the kind of information that I have access to, and this is the kind of information that I'm going to react with. Now, you have more information when you sit at the Energy Regulatory Commission. You have more information as a director of Petroleum. You have more information because you know how the open tender system works. Now, can you please explain? He does not want it to be scientific, so just make sure that you reduce your engineering mathematics a bit. But just explain to us, when you invite for a tender, what is the role of ERC, if at all it has any role, or the Ministry of Energy, or who is it that has any role of making sure that there are checks and balances within the tender system?
Thank you, Eric. Let me clarify. The tendering of petroleum products is coordinated by the Ministry of Energy, and all marketers are requested to give in their numbers. What's their forecast for the next period? Mm-hmm. The number is consolidated, and they are
and by their numbers here, you're actually talking about what they expect,
the quantity they expect to sell in the next period,
market,
say
right.
3 weeks or 2 weeks,
right?
And that number is given to the Ministry of Energy. The Ministry of Energy invites a tender to all the 63 companies which have licenses, mm-hmm. and the tender opening date is fixed and open to everybody to go and participate. It is important to clarify here that the marketers will only tender for premium and freight. Once the tender is opened, and the ministry will do the analysis, and then it will award to the lowest bidder. Mm-hmm. And once it's awarded to the lowest bidder, the bidder will import the product as provided for in the notice agreement. There is an agreement in place which has been signed by all the marketers, and they are supposed to abide by that agreement. So as a regulator, one of the things we check when we are doing the prices is to ensure that the tender figure that was given when the award was given is what is reflected in the worksheets when we are doing the prices.
Okay.
So that is not exaggerated, to ensure that that is one of the controls that we have to look for.
And Derek, I want to thank Linus. I want to thank Linus, because that's where exactly the problem is. He has said it, and even Francis has confirmed it. The lowest is actually what is suppose. How low is this law? Supposing you have some under cartels work in that sense, such that if the lowest will have been, say, like 1, just for hypothetical, supposing the lowest in quotes is actually 3. So how low is low? And then look at the Minister of Energy. Is both a marketer, because Minister of Energy has direct control on some of these suppliers, National Oil Corporation, for example. So at what point should they then be allowed to be coordinating? Look at the word coordination. Coordination could as well include even pricing, because they're analyzing. They are not even liable to expose that to the public. Where is the consumer interest in all this?
Let me ask this question then directly. When the tenders are placed, Engineer Gitonga, is there a way of us knowing the freight and premium should not go beyond this figure?
We have no control that as a country. Not even the market has control of that, because that comes from the owners of the vessels. When they say, like
If Stephen
the vice
Mutoro
chairman was explaining,
Yeah.
if the taxi driver tells you is 20 shillings to Haringam, the other one tells you is 10 shillings from here to Haringam, then what would you do next? You have to go with that because they are the owners of the vessels, and if you don't take it, they will take it to another market. You are not the only
Do you have a
market.
way of actually making sure that the taxi driver has actually quoted this to this player?
Yeah. Then this despair.
Let me just comment about that. Steve,
us-
remember there's one critical thing here. All procurement is a future procurement, isn't it? Even the shipping is a future shipping. Now
we
the
are actually
company-
bidding today for
Yes.
something in
Yes.
November,
Something-
in
so,
December.
So you don't have a vessel sitting there. You're getting a view that when I go to the market to charter a vessel X weeks from today, I will get roughly these freight estimates. And I'd like to just give you just a few scenarios to consider. Somebody was loading a vessel on a particular day, and the tsunami in Japan happened.
Yeah.
And two things happened. Nuclear stations were knocked out. The following morning, Japan was ramping up their fuel-based power plants, and shipping just dried up because every vessel that could be found
It's
was
going to
heading to Japan, isn't it? So marketers or suppliers are exposed to these dynamics, and unfortunately, they cannot change after the commitment has been done, isn't it? The same thing happened, and I remember I was in this industry when Katrina happened, isn't it? And the price of oil jumped by at least $100, isn't it? Now the supplier is held to that. Shipping dries up. So these things, these are the vagaries of
These are the
oil
risks
trade,
that-
isn't it? These
and
are the
risks.
these are the risks.
I want
Now,
to-
just coming back again, and I think it's very, very important we clear the air. There is not a cartel in the oil industry, at least none that I'm aware of. And we as an organization are very, very clear about our responsibilities. And the industry, as far as I know it, is very clear about its responsibilities. But don't take our word for it. As I'm inviting you, there are 63 marketers. And tomorrow morning you can walk in and come in and offer. National Oil Corporation, you mentioned it, Eric, is government owned. National Oil is always a recipient of the invitation to tender, and I think they've participated in the past, isn't it? If there was an abnormal profit to be made, then I'm sure National Oil will participate there, and then you start to see pricing that actually should reflect where the market is.
Right.
Francis,
So really, I want to reiterate that this is an industry that has responsible players. Unfortunately, and I understand it very well, petroleum is an emotive product, isn't it? Now, on the one part that where the industry is aligned to the consumer, and we have a lot of alignment with our consumers because we understand them. Remember, and I want you to take this very clearly. Our margin is set by the regulator, isn't it? So if the cost of oil, the world price as ERC has said here, if it came low, actually you have a better return. We pay the banks on a percentage basis. So if we are paying 1% of 50 shillings, it makes more sense for us than 1% of 100 shillings, isn't it, as cost of finance? So really, I think it's a message that we need to explain very clearly to the consumers that we want lower prices because our margin is a fixed margin, isn't it? And we really do our very best to ensure that really what we are in control of, which is the freight and premium, is done. I want to just point out to you when shipping went haywire because of the Somali situation. We
Because of
were
the
going
pirates.
around Madagascar
Yeah.
to come up to Mombasa to deliver oil on time to the consumer of Kenya.
I'm
So
really
we understand our responsibility.
I'm
very
really
well.
struggling not to interrupt him.
Okay,
But I'll
please,
tell
go
him
ahead.
there's one thing that we have not controlled, the three of us, is the time it takes to have this show. So I think let's go to the specific issues. One, when you're in any business, Eric, there must be a risk. So purporting to talk about, those Katrinas and the likes, I mean, is like, you need 101 of doing any business or supply. So that is a fact. What he's saying is not a problem. Then cartels, even look at the oil-producing countries.
Stephen Mutoro, I'm going to have to interrupt you here.
Yes.
Because, like you said, we do not have
Yes.
much time.